Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Auburn Energy Committee meeting on Monday, February 22nd. It is now called to order at approximately 5:31 p.m. This meeting is being recorded and broadcasted by Local Access Programming. Is there anyone here in the audience tonight that is recording tonight's meeting? There being none, we'll go to our first agenda item. We have Brian Murphy here from Colonial Power, who would like to take the floor for a moment.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again. Thanks. Not much to report. Everything's going pretty smoothly. I just want to let you know that we did meet with some seniors at the Senior Center. These guys were here to join me, and I had prepared some FAQs beforehand, and you think that I'm like, I got every question covered. Absolutely, but sure enough, I didn't, which is good. That means that people are paying attention, and the folks there had some really good questions. I'd say there were, maybe 10 or 15 people in attendance, and we were there for 45 minutes or so, answered everyone's questions to their satisfaction, I think. I left with a couple of to-dos, and I don't need to say names here publicly, but one of them was already a Constellation customer, and she had signed up with Constellation on her own, but was locked into a 24-month rate that's higher than the town's rate. And so she asked if we could intercede on her behalf to see if they could slide her over into the town program, and Constellation did that.
That's awesome.
All right, so really good news for her. They did sort of, slap my hand a little bit, like, hey, don't be doing this for too many people. And I said, well, why not? And they said, and Constellation's an enormous company. So keep in mind that there are sales reps out there who get paid a commission to sign up these customers. And if we take them out of their revenue stream and move them into the town's program, sometimes if we did it in serious volume, then it would probably affect an employee at Constellation who might not be very happy about that. But in this particular case, we were able to get this customer moved down in rate, down to the town's rate, so it was really good. We also, one of the things that, Maureen and I discussed last time was about budget billing. Our standard protocol has always been that a budget billing customer retains their budget billing rights through National Grid, regardless of the source of their supply. And when Maureen had asked the National Grid customers rep, they actually said the opposite. They said if you migrate to a competitive supplier, then you sort of lose that budget ability, and then when you got your bill, the budget was still there. So it's I think hopefully we've been saying for years that if you're on a budget billing a plan with the utility, that you get to keep that. And so I was really nervous that National Grid might have made a policy change and we weren't aware of it. We want to speak truthfully to the customers and make sure we're always giving them accurate information. So far so good. If you're on a budget plan, you keep it, and they just remit to the supplier what's necessary. And as you know, if you're on a budget plan, you can see whether you're over or under with National Grid at any given time, and they true you up once a year. When they estimate your usage and what they believe rates are going to look like, they give you a new budget plan every year. So that's all the news to report right now. Everything, as I said, other than the incidents with that customer and the question about budget billing, things have been going pretty smoothly.
Brian, have the calls kind of died down at this point?
Yes. Most customers that are on the program, it's on their bill now. Customers that had opted out or were with another supplier and are seeking to join, most of those calls have already come in and those transactions have been processed. So yeah, the call volume's decreased significantly. And we expect it'll remain that way until the town goes shopping again to see what's going on, next fall for, how the rates look and whether the program will continue with Constellation or with somebody else and what the rates might be. Any other questions?
The only one thing, I think, and I've sent the bills to you and I'm waiting for the third one, and I just haven't had the time to dig into it. It does look like I'm still in the budget plan,
Yep.
But I can't tell whether there's been a difference in the rate. And I don't know how that's going to affect the true up. So because of the timing of when the budget plan started versus when we opted in, That's one piece I think we want to watch and just be able to kind of inform the residents to see. I just haven't taken the time to look at them and understand if if I'll see the benefit of the lower rates when they do the reconciliation. Because as of right now, it's still set, the dollar amount is set at the same amount.
Yeah, I see your point. That's a good question, because as you enter the shoulder months, as we call them, March, April, May, when customers' consumption decreases because it's lighter out, the weather's starting to get warmer, be curious to see what your reconciliation looks like. Like I happen to have both of your bills here in front of me, so I can see that even though your rate went down with the initial month under the town's program, because it was, the depths of winter, the consumption went up, and there was also a long meter cycle too, but so your arrearage, if you will, to National Grid went up, even though the supply charges went down. For example, if I may, you sure? Okay. From November 18th to December 21st, you're on the basic service rate of 13 cents and, roughly 13 cents a kilowatt hour, consuming 649 kilowatt hours for a supply charge of $84.62. From December 21st to January 21st, you're on the town's rate now. That's at 9.5 cents. Your consumption went up to 866 kilowatt hours from 649. Your supply cost was $82.46. So your consumption went up by 100 plus, almost 200 kilowatt hours, and your bill was actually $2 less for the supply. So we're seeing, there's a net positive there for you. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Will that, what your over or under to National Grid look like as the months progress? I don't know. I don't know if they reset the budget based on what their projected rates are, or what the town's rate is. I have a feeling they do it on what they think their basic service rates are going to be, not what deal the town can get, because they have aggregations all over the state. So imagine that they'd be having to put on a different hat every day trying to figure out, well, in Auburn the budget should be this because they have this rate, but over here in this town they probably just go, well, we think our basic service rate's going to be 13, so we're going to slap a budget on you of 148. So I think that's what they do, but I can't be sure.
Well, great. Well, keep us posted. We'll watch to see how it goes over the shoulder months. So.
Great. Thank you. And I do look forward to hearing more about, through Eric and the team at Town Hall about the solar opportunity at the landfill. I know that's a big project. You're going to hear about it tonight. But there are ways that Colonial can help the town incorporate some of the power that's generated there and some of the other benefits that are generated by those facilities into the power that's consumed by residents and into the rate plans that the town has. So there are some synergies that can happen there. It's a long ways away, but we'll certainly keep a dialogue open with the town and with their consultants, okay?
Great.
All right.
Okay, so
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. And we have David Cohen here from PMSCO.
Hi, thank you all for inviting me here today. I'm from actually Power Management, Temesco. We are similar to Colonial in the energy service business. However, our scope is not just commodity purchasing and transaction. We're into efficiency projects, and there's a real big focus on municipal solar. We currently have, I think, maybe 16 municipal solar projects on, anywhere from North Brookfield, Westport, Dighton, completed the city of Quincy. We're working in Randolph. We're all over the place, and we've got a considerable amount of experience, not only with 7,000 commercial, industrial, and municipal purchasing clients in every deregulated state, but when we're solar, we've grown with the Massachusetts solar industry, which is very unique in the country, very aggressive, and very changing. It changes all the time. So when we were back 6 months or so ago with Eric, we had initially had discussed looking at your landfill. And I'll give you an overview of how solar works in Massachusetts. Solar in and of itself, if you were just to go out and purchase panels without any tax benefits or anything, doesn't really make a whole bunch of sense, because solar is inefficient compared to natural gas generation or other traditional sources of generation. Federal government gives everybody a 30% investment tax credit for the purchase and construction of a solar array. Interesting for a municipality that doesn't have a tax appetite, you would never go out and actually buy your own solar panels. So they have a model called a power purchase agreement, where we would get a third party, a finance company, to actually come in, own, pay for the construction, insure, maintain the array for the life of the project, which is typically 20 years in a municipal setting. They'll take your landfill, they'll take your roofs, they'll take a parking lot, they'll construct solar, and you will agree to either buy the solar, buy the energy at a reduced rate called a power purchase agreement rate, which you'll look at, you would see numbers 7 cents per kilowatt hour delivered, as opposed to what you were just listening to, where you've got the utility charging their delivery, and then you've got the supplier charging their 10 or 11 cents, whatever it is. You'd actually just net out at 7, 8, 9 cents, whatever that number would be for the town's purposes. They have community solar programs in the state that are actually favored. So we could take your landfill and build, let's say, a megawatt of solar or 2 megawatts of solar. We could actually assign the credits that are being put into the grid for that solar project to your residents. We're actually doing that right now for the Reading Municipal Lighting Division, for the Reading, Wakefield, North Reading, and I believe Linfield. Don't quote me on that, but we're going to build arrays for the municipality, or for the lighting company, and they are going to sign up residents who are going to take credits. So they're going to see a credit on their bill. And the way that works is the same way as SRECs work. If we were to, have you all dealt with buying virtual net metering credits yet? Have you heard of that?
It's a process that should be explained, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, I'll explain that to you.
Thank you.
Massachusetts, we can do something pretty unique. We can actually build an array in a town that's part of your utility and load zone. I assume your National Grid, West Central Mass? It's not NEMA, it's whatever load zone it is. We could build an array in any of the National Grid, West Central Mass load zones, and actually pump the energy into the grid at that field, say 2 towns over, and fill out something called a Schedule Z, where we would actually apply the credits to your designated account, and when you got that bill at the end of the month, you'd actually see a credit of 16 cents per kilowatt hour, and then you're responsible for paying the array owner 80% of that, or whatever the deal is that you work with. So you get, it's like free money.
Mm.
And it's incented towards housing authorities, low-income housing right now, in municipalities. So virtual net metering credits are really cool and really, really beneficial. It truly is, money for nothing. However, Massachusetts has 2 limitations that they put on net metering credits. One of them, there is a limit on how many megawatts statewide can be put into the incentive program, or the SREC program. And the second thing is there is actually a cap on the amount of solar that each utility has to have. So National Grid might have a cap number of 1.5% of their total volume of electricity in Massachusetts for virtual net metering. And they get to that cap, and then they have to adjust the program. They expand the program, and the incentives actually go down because solar becomes more affordable as it becomes more ubiquitous. So that would be one way that the town could take care of its residents and benefit, would be some sort of virtual net metering community solar program, and that'd be something we'd investigate when we're looking for this project. Another really important use that we should look at would be to do something called a behind-the-meter application use, where we would look at your schools or your municipal buildings, rooftops and parking lots, and actually use the energy behind the meter. So if we were to do an array on your high school, and your high school uses, 3 million kilowatt hours a year, and we were to get a megawatt on the property there, or a half a megawatt, that would actually be energy that the high school doesn't pull from the grid, and it's got an incredible, it's a complete avoided cost of electricity situation. So if you take, 1 kilowatt hour and you don't use it, you're saving the full cost of delivery in the energy. And the interesting part about that is if the net metering caps are flexible, if there's room to net meter, everything that you generate that you don't use, you actually get credit on your bill for. So that meter theoretically spins backwards. It's a net. So if you have a school closed on a Sunday, Monday through Saturday in July, and that meter's just netting out negative for you. So over the course of the year, the system will be matched in size to the use of the building, so you don't have, you're not putting 2 megawatts into the grid, but only using a quarter of a megawatt. So they size it appropriately. But every single one of your properties should be at least evaluated for a proposal from the solar vendors, because that would be the best way for you to save. The same type of financing, the owner would own it, maintain it, build it, insure it, warranty the output for a long period of time, and then there is something you can do at the end of that period, which you could renegotiate to buy power at a really low rate. But we tell our clients to leave that open and wait till the end, and then just say, look, we're not really sure what we want to do. Maybe you could take that stuff off our roof, in which case the owner is probably going to want to donate it to the town. And that's like a long-term strategy, but it's something that we would talk about and consider at a later point. Parking lots are also very, very attractive under the SREC program. So what they had done is, when the state incentive program went from SREC 1 to SREC 2, they put a factor on the SRECs. So if you were to generate 1,000 kilowatt hours under the old SREC program, you get one certificate, and it goes to auction, and maybe it gives you $500 a year. Under the second program, they actually applied a factor. So they don't want people just buying up farms and putting solar panels on them, so they give that like a 50% SREC factor. But if you build on a landfill or a rooftop or a parking lot, you're looking at 80 to 100% of that SREC. So they're incenting, they're telling you where they want the solar panels to go. So you probably won't see a whole lot of golf courses being bought up, or driving ranges, and stuff that was, the green fields are not preferred. Now it's brown fields and things like that. So SREC 2 is actually filled and oversubscribed now, and we're waiting for SREC 3 to come out to tell us where the incentives are going to be and what's going to be the most attractive thing for the town of Auburn. And 99% chance that landfills are still going to be preferred, and behind-the-meter stuff on rooftops are going to be preferred, and parking lots are going to be preferred. And what happens is, when you get your offer from these vendors that we deal with, it's a blend of everything that you do. Or each project could be taken on its own. If you decide you want to start with just the landfill, looking at the landfill, that's what you do. I mean, we'll accommodate whatever way you want to go. It's my suggestion, however, that I think the SREC 3 iteration that should be coming out in the next 4 to 6 weeks is going to be something called the declining block. So they're going to say the first 150 megawatts is going to be incented at a certain rate, and then when that gets filled up, it's going to go down and then down again. So we want the town of Auburn to be at the first block. So it makes sense, even though we're not going to get a solid offer right now on anything, it makes sense to have the vendors come out, tour the sites, start doing preliminary designs, coming into your board for presentations and proposals and offers, and then we would talk as a group and score them and evaluate what makes the most sense. And you could parse them. You could say, well, I like the one on the middle school, but the roof is bad, and we're not going to do that. And that brings up another point. They won't put a solar array on a roof that's not good, because it has to last for 20 years. And typically, they don't penetrate roofs. They use a ballasted system. Carports are very, very interesting in that they provide a dual benefit. Not only do they generate energy, they protect cars from the elements. And not totally, but I'm doing a project at Stonehill College right now where we have built 2.6 megawatts across the school under SREC, it made it, SREC 1, no, it made it into SREC 2, 2.6 megawatts, and now we're doing another 2 megawatts in a parking lot, has 1,000 parking spots. So they're now going to allow all their freshmen to bring cars in, and they have LED lighting under the canopies. The cars will not get buried in snow. It reduces their snow removal costs. And it's added safety because they can actually, it's much nicer, much nicely lit, more than it was before. They put security cameras underneath them, and they actually have a finished underside where they can put their school logo on it, or they're really, really beautiful. Whole Foods has done them in a bunch of stores. There are an awful lot of possibilities for us to examine for the town. And it doesn't cost you anything. The way our company works is we'll do everything from drafting the RFP to getting it, assisting you to getting it into the central register. And our actual document that we use for municipalities doesn't even get updated. We've gone through many revisions with, the central register, so we have it where they want it now. And we'd invite, anybody to come in and give a proposal. However, we do have significant experience in the market and have vetted a whole bunch of vendors, and we know who will actually, we know who can get the projects done and get them done the right way, because anyone can come in to the town and offer you a really low PPA rate, but actually not be able to get the project financed and built. And they do something called orphan PPA agreements, where they'll come in and say, okay, we can offer the town of Auburn, 3 megawatts of solar or virtual net metering credits at this rate. And it looks good, and you say, wow, that's a company you want to go with, but at the end of the day, they can't get it built because they have to go to a financing source, and the financing source will get a much higher return at a higher rate somewhere else, and they're going to spend their money somewhere else. So we just don't want to waste your time or ours, so we'll vet the vendors. And we use a lot of strong national vendors, and we used, some really big public companies like Solar City for the city of Quincy. They won the bid. We did all of their schools. Well, I'm sorry. We did a lot of their schools. They have a lot of buildings that are really, really old, from like the 1800s and 1700s, that didn't have suitable roofs. But we did a whole bunch of their schools, and it was a very successful program. And we've used local companies also that are very well qualified, like Select out of Hopkinton, that has got an awful lot of systems built in the state. So ultimately, when our process is done, you will be able to choose the best one, and you'll know after the presentations who you want to partner with, for sure. That's been our experience. One will stand out above all of them. And then our work isn't done. We have to actually then work through the interconnection stuff that we have to deal with the utilities. I'm sure our work is not going to stop at the Energy Committee. There's going to be someone in town, whether it's a Board of Selectmen or a town manager, that's going to have to be presented to, and maybe it'll be a collective effort, but, we'll be there with you right from start to finish. Assist you, like I said, assist you in the scoring and evaluation and discussions, and just finding the best deal for you if it's there. And, we might get a year down the road or 10 months down the road with the project, and nothing might happen. That can happen. If something changes in the market, say if Pennsylvania announces an incentive program that just blows away the Massachusetts program, all of the money in solar will move from Massachusetts to Pennsylvania, because it happened to Pennsylvania, happened to Hawaii, and you would think, why isn't there a ton of solar in New Mexico and Texas and Arizona, and these states that have 350 days of sun every year? It's because they don't have state incentives like we have. And, New Jersey actually had a very vibrant solar industry for years, and it dried up, and again, everything came to Massachusetts. So Mass will slow down, and we want to stay ahead of it, and, you should at least get the ball rolling now. And I can get into as much of the minutia of the market as you want, but that's a pretty high-level overview. And our services are compensated. We write our fee, which is based on a per-watt DC basis. So the more solar we build for you or have built for you, the more work we have to do, and obviously the higher our fee is. Not on a percentage basis, but it goes on a per-watt DC. It's written right into the RFP. So the winning vendor actually knows what they have to pay us. The town doesn't have to pay us, and all we'll ask for the town contract-wise is a simple letter of authorization saying that you've decided to use us as your energy consultant of record for the solar project, and you're not obligated to us. All we're going to do is ask that if we're doing it for you, that you don't have another company doing the same thing at the same time. I mean, we're very busy, and we don't want to waste your time or ours. We want to do it the right way, and we control the whole process. The results are always better, so we have everybody competing on a level playing field, and it's very transparent. As far as procurement of our services go, there are towns that have town council. I would defer to whatever your town council says on how we should be procured. We would say that there are, energy consultant exemptions under 30B, and there are other exemptions in the law. And we've also been procured by RFP in a couple of different situations. Because our services are kind of unique, there's not a lot of companies that do it the way we do it and as good as we do it, but I'll defer to the town's judgment on that issue. Certainly not going to suggest one thing or another, but we've done it all over the place, and we're ready, willing, and able to get going like immediately if you decide you want to engage our services. So I'm open to any questions you might have. Or
David, can you speak a little to, so it seems like your engagement is kind of hand-holding throughout the vendor selection, and then do you guys stay involved through the actual implementation of the project?
right through commissioning.
And then how does that relationship kind of occur? So you have a vendor that wins the bid.
Right.
And then after the project is completed, who kind of owns that relationship from an ongoing basis? Does the town
Well,
then?
that's a great question, because ultimately the town is the contracting party with the vendor. However, we're your consultant, and we're going to stay with you to manage the process from start to commissioning, all right? And after it's commissioned, we're still available to help if you need it. And there's going to be a designated person in town or a designated team in town. Usually there's someone in facilities department or someone who's in public works or another department that has more knowledge about every building. We find that we do a school. It's usually the custodian that has been working at that school for 15 years that knows more about that school than everybody else. That custodian will report to somebody else. So we've presented to school committees. I mean, we will stay with you until the project is completed. However, that's a great question. You are the contracting party, and our obligation is to stay with you until it's live, until the project's live, and then beyond, if
But so
necessary.
say 5 years down the road, there's some type of issue with the project.
You can call us and we'll be right there for you. Absolutely. Now, a good thing about solar is it doesn't talk. It doesn't go on strike. It doesn't move. It doesn't need to be fed. As long as the arrays are secure. If we built a big field, it'd be fenced. If it goes up on the roof, no one's going to get up on the roof. Typically, problems that you can have with solar would be if a panel could break if someone hits a line drive near a school, a baseball, and it hits a panel. It could crack a panel. They're pretty robust, and they typically don't, but they could. A power surge like a lightning strike, or something physically impacting them. If you had to get up on the roof and you had a custodian that wanted to remove some snow and used a metal edge shovel, that would crack a panel. So the physical damage to a panel will be noted right away, because the panels are all connected to a monitoring system that goes to the state and also to the owner of the array. And if that goes down, the owner of the array is going to say, look, this needs to be generating energy for us, because if it's not generating, the town's not, or if someone's not paying for those credits. So if something goes down, and also the inverters are so sensitive to the power that comes out of the inverters is a lot cleaner than the energy that comes from the street. So there's not such a variation in the voltage. If there's even a tiny discrepancy, the inverter will notify someone and it will shut down. So you don't have to worry about knowing that the panels are down, because they'll be down. And another thing that I forgot to mention is monitoring is done through a web app, and you could actually incorporate the code from the web app into your town's website. So anyone that went on the town's website could click on to a button and then see what you're doing live on any of your sites. and it looks like a dashboard, and then you could put widgets on it that say, you've taken the emissions from 400 cars off the road. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like that. They're pretty cool. And they change, like 1 million smartphone charges or a day's energy use at a data center, and they just rotate. And we could actually write into the RFP that you wanted an educational component, so we could teach the kids about this, and we did that in Quincy. We would spec out that we want a monitor in whichever location that you wanted, and they'll come in and mount just a TV on the wall, which has a web connection to it, and it'll say, the name of the school, and this is what we're doing today. It has like like a speedometer, and it's really cool, because you can go onto a graph and then see when the sun comes up and when it gets really hot, and then when the sun goes down. I do it all the time. It's not that interesting, but it's funny.
And so you mentioned, so they're leased, so I'm assuming that the vendor owns them in regards to like that they insure them?
Yes, they do everything. There's not going to be a check written by the town for anything. They're going to enter into a document that is a lease, where the town will grant them a lease to put their equipment on your property, whether it be the landfill or the roofs or a parking lot. And the second document will be the power purchase agreement. And if there's more power produced in this system than you guys are using, they'll actually pay you rent, and they'll just net meter the credits out to someone else. So say we had a big factory, local, or a housing authority, or something that's not related to the town, and we just can't use any more of the energy, they'll net meter that, assuming the caps are going to go up and assuming the incentives are right, to someone else. And you won't have to worry, you'll just collect a check. So ultimately, I see your project as a combination of all of that. And, we'd want to keep as much of it in town as we could, or behind the meter as we could, because that's when you'll get your biggest benefit. And again, some things might make sense, and you might want to shrink them down after you look at the drawings and the plans, and other things you might want to expand and say, well, I just thought of something. Another thing we've done, actually, we've worked with assessors' offices and looked at tax parcels, just pieces of land in towns that aren't doing anything because they were taken. And we've actually incorporated those into our RFPs. So, and we've had some towns with an awful lot of land. And, too bad this wasn't 2 or 3 years ago when SREC 1 was still here and it was, going through the roof. But now they're a little bit more selective, and we have to be a little bit more selective too. We want to get the best parcels that are the closest to the utility, that have the lowest cost of interconnection, and it's just a whole bunch of different moving parts. Mm-hmm. But we'll work. You guys will be solar experts by the time I'm done with it.
One of the main concerns is technically you're contracting to the owner of the array, correct?
That's correct.
Being paid through them.
Yes.
So what does the town get from you stating, basically what you do for us, the time limits, time constraints, anything like that?
That's
I
a
mean,
great
you
question.
say all we need is,
a letter of authorization.
Authorization.
We could certainly have a
which
memorandum.
I can give you that now, but what am I going to get in return?
Okay, we could
from
certainly give you a detailed memorandum of understanding or something that outlines everything, and we have done that before. But I just wanted to, I guess the reason I had made it seem so simple is I wanted to make it seem like you're not really committed to us. Like, we're not holding your feet to a fire. When we do, same thing with commodity purchase agreements, like we like to put our money where our mouth is, and if someone doesn't want to work with us or thinks that they can get a better deal somewhere else or do better than we're doing for them, we want them to go. And it really doesn't happen.
We're not so much worried about you holding our feet to the fire. We want to hold your feet to our fire.
Right.
So that we know that the project
will get done.
gets handled and
yes.
done.
All I can tell you is, we're very flexible, and we can give you whatever type of document you need and make whatever promises, that we feel we can deliver on and that you expect of us. We're not going to overpromise and underdeliver, that's for sure. Our business model is, we're only as good as what our word and our reputation, and you can certainly check out our references, municipal and private. We work with some of the biggest industrial clients around here, national brands, and very proud of our reputation and ability to get stuff done.
David, knowing each town or each project is different, can you just speak a little bit to average timeline? So when the town's ready to move forward? I mean, are they all different, or do you kind of see something that's somewhat
That's an
generic?
interesting question. I think the thing that restricts us most in dealing with towns is actually the town itself. We have, a lot of times, we wait for documents. We'll wait for bills, we'll wait for roof diagrams, we'll wait for things. The solar vendors are very hungry to move. They have software that's really easy for them to look at the GPS coordinates of a parcel. They can look at your roof from satellite and size things. They can look at a lot of different things through GIS, like they look at all the layers and the wetlands and the topography. So they're really quick at getting designs done. It's getting the decisions from the towns. And that's not saying anything bad. It just, there's a lot of different interests and ideas. And, you know, some people think, well, I have a brother-in-law that does solar and he can do it better. And we deal with that an awful lot. But it's not going to be, it won't be a 2-year project, 18 months,
Mhm.
safe. Landfills are, if you have your post-closure report, if there's no issues with the landfill, you know, they don't want anything more than a 12-degree slope on a landfill. So they'll determine the usable space on a landfill pretty quickly. And, you know, if your landfill's made up of a couple of different parcels, you know, there are just all kinds of different things that come up with landfills. We were doing one for Republic Waste that owns that big gigantic landfill on Route 24 in Randolph, and we got into it for an awful lot of work and an awful lot of time, and the engineers came out and said that the landfill actually was cut into the town of Canton and the town of Randolph. And so you need two different utility interconnections and it was just two different everything, and it ended up not working out. There was a lot of time and effort spent on it, but it just logistically wouldn't work. So we would have to determine suitability after looking at documents, and if you engage us, we'll get on it right away. Roofs are challenging. Sometimes they'll say we want to do Eric, you mentioned to me that a lot of your roofs were fairly new, right? Was it the schools?
No, the high school, middle school is brand new, and the high
Okay.
school is about 10 years old.
Okay, probably both very suitable. Sometimes we have to wait for capital improvement projects. They say, well, we're doing our roof in the spring, we're doing our roof in the fall, we're doing our roof, so we can't do anything until then. Those types of things can hold you up. It's not going to be us. You know, it'll be something physical or legal, but rooftops could happen a lot quicker than 18 months, too. If we decide that after the SREC program gets defined, you could have, after town approval, and we're not dealing with weather issues in the winter, real quick build.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick build. I'm doing Malden Catholic High School right now, and, I mean, probably 7 months start to finish. I did Easton Nazarene College in Quincy, same type of thing. They said, let's go. But you're dealing with private institutions, which are different, so.
And when you mentioned earlier about you'll get multiple options and you can either go for all of them or kind of select a la
Yes.
carte. 2 questions related to that. Is there any type of economy of scale to take, you know, if a vendor presents, I don't know how they do their.
Yeah, that's a
their
great
options.
question. And the answer is yes, there is. Because what they're going to do is they're going to take the whole project and aggregate it and figure out what the cost of the whole project is, and they divide it by the number of watts, and they figure out a cost per watt to build. Now, if you have a school that has a roof that's, say, 20,000 square feet, and you have a school that has a roof that has 100,000 square feet, it costs almost as much to ramp up on the smaller school, and that's a lot of the cost in building solar, is making it safe to construct with all of the OSHA regulations and the railings that they have to hire, and the lulls that they have to bring the materials up on. And they're very, very strict safety-wise. Like all of these companies, safety is their number one thing, and we work around school schedules, so you're not, you know, you don't want lulls delivering panels when kids are walking into school. So we're, you know, the schools that we're talking about doing right now, we're going to be delivering the panels on April vacation at Malden Catholic High School. So we're sensitive to safety and schedules, but the question is yes, there is an economy of scale captured when you aggregate. But there might be, you might even end up choosing two vendors. Like, one person might come in and just say, we can do this plot, and here's the cost. And that might just be an amazing deal that we can't turn down. And we write it right into the RFP that you might select one or multiple vendors. And they will adjust their power purchase agreement according to, if they come in and say, we're going to offer you 9 cents, and we cut out half the project, they might say, well, you're cutting out half of the project, we're going to give it to you for 10.5 or 10.1. So the economy, the numbers will change as the size of the project changes and the number of vendors changes.
So there is a good chance, though, that it could be one vendor if we decided to do.
I think so.
A couple
I think so.
roofs and maybe a couple parking lots plus the landfill.
I think so. I think it'll turn out that you'll see an aggressive package by one or two of the vendors that will include an awful lot. And we encourage them to be as aggressive as possible. And because it's harder to go up and upscale than it is to eliminate and just say, no, it doesn't work here, so we're going to take it out. And then they'll come back and say, okay, if you're going to take out that school, then we're going to redo our numbers. And you're not committed to them until you get the numbers. So you're not going to agree to use Solar City and then they come back with a crazy number and you're not going to be stuck with them. You can always tell them it doesn't work. So, and we'll be there with you the whole time. So, is that adequate?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
It wasn't exactly clear whether your group is going to prepare the RFPs and you also submit the RFP, so the town doesn't submit it, you submit it on behalf of the town?
We actually could do that, but we prefer if you have a purchasing agent in town, I assume, at Town Hall, or someone that does your RFPs for purchasing?
Yes and no.
Okay, well, we will.
Our chief procurement officer is the town manager.
Okay.
But a lot of times, each individual department will do their own RFPs or RFQs,
Okay.
Under her guidance.
Okay, so we'll defer to your town manager's preferences, but ultimately, the best way to do it would be to issue it through the town, have it, in conjunction with the town, and then when we do the opening, we'll be there for the opening of it, and we'll handle
But
it.
you would do the drafting
Yes,
of the language
yes,
and the
absolutely.
paperwork, and then,
We'll make this as easy as possible. Now, obviously, we'll share the draft with the town, and if there's something that legal wants changed or...
right. I mean, we do that a lot of times with engineering firms.
Yes.
They'll draft the paperwork for us,
Right.
but we...
Yeah, but we'll do all that for you,
Okay.
for sure.
And the evaluation process that will happen with the town's involvement. It's when you solicit and you get a response to the RFP, or will get a response to the RFP, we don't rule anybody else until we go through an evaluation.
That's correct.
Process.
We'll score them.
We'll score them and
Yes.
and you can provide guidance on how to.
I'll give you our the score sheet that we use. You have, most likely, the best thing for you to do would be to form either a subcommittee or just keep your whole committee as the vetting committee for this project. And, we'll, if you want one of us to be on the committee with you, we'll be on the committee, or we'll at least advise the committee. And, we would like to keep it to like maybe five presentations, the top 5, just to not waste your time. And we'll give each one of them 45 minutes or an hour on a day that you pick. And after that, we can have another meeting to score them and discuss them. And you could always invite people back to ask questions or put that out to the group so they all have an equal opportunity to answer them.
Sure.
And then you'll make your selection and you'll do an award letter. And we'll give you an award letter that you can put on your town letterhead, and you can just do the award. And after you do the award, we'll take the next step, which will be to start developing.
Sure.
Now, is that a standard time frame for presentations, 45 minutes to an hour, or half hour? Is half hour sufficient? Or?
I think yes, because you're gonna,
I mean, are we
Think
gonna be
about
sitting there with
RFPs,
the
yeah,
deer in the headlights looking
you'll be
after a while?
glazed.
Right.
After the third one, you'll want to hit the door. But they're gonna provide us with 3-ring binders that tell you everything about the company. And the most important thing is the pages that say how big it's gonna be, where it's gonna be, and how much money you're gonna save or what the prices are gonna be. You don't care about we'll vet their experience. They're all gonna be, you don't want to know they did projects in India or China, or you don't want to know about the top executives, and all of that stuff is going to come in the RFP documents. They just boilerplate them, and they're boring. And yeah, we could make them, give them a half an hour, and if you want to keep them over, you will, but you won't. You won't.
Do you see the same top vendors? So when you talk about that top 5, when you think historically?
They're not really. It's funny because some of the ones that you think, I've had, like, for the city of Quincy, I had one of the best vendors come into the city for their presentation, and they said, okay, we're telling you the truth, no one else is telling you the truth, we can only do one building in this town. And the people were like, what? And they couldn't explain it. They just said, look, the economics here are not going to work, and we're the only ones that are going to be truthful with you, and this is how much we can do. It's like a quarter of a megawatt. We'll start there, and then we'll do more later. Well, I mean, we got 18 schools done. So, and that was from a really experienced vendor. That just blew us away. We didn't
Too
know.
old school, maybe? something
I
like that?
have no
Set-
idea.
set in their ways?
I have no idea why they came in like that. And then we've had
They didn't want to do
Yeah.
funny thing that drives their interest is their source of funding, their source of capital. So I'll give you an example. There's a huge company called SunEdison. SunEdison, about a year ago, was the 600-pound gorilla in solar. They're just huge. And they're public, and they're worth about $7 billion. Their market cap was like $7 billion. And their initial funding was done with venture capital, and they needed a really high rate of return to satisfy the investor. So their power purchase agreement prices were high, because, the internal rate of return on the projects had to be high. And then they used debt financing, and their cost of capital went down even lower, and they became more aggressive and were offering better numbers. And they were going out and signing, all the housing authorities with these great numbers. And then they formed something called a yield co, where they actually were able to get really, really low financing, and they were owning assets and then transferring them out after a certain amount of time. And they went out and were so aggressive and gave such great offers to everybody, and you can read now that, their company is worth next to nothing, and they're selling all their assets, and, they grew too fast and they were too aggressive, but they have a big name, and they did an awful lot, and they might be one of the ones that come in and bid on it. It's just a really dynamic marketplace, and the vendors change. Even though the vendors change themselves, their philosophies change. And we just have to make sure that we get one that's going to come in, do what they say they're going to do, and deliver the project with a minimal headaches for all of us.
So do you actually do invitations to some companies, or is it strictly advertisement like Central Register?
Well, the fairest way to do it is to put it out into the Central Register, so there's public notice. But if someone doesn't respond because they missed it, some of the good ones, we will definitely call them and say, look at the Central Register, we'd like you to participate in this, for sure. And, you might be surprised at what we're able to come up with.
And just out of curiosity, other than some of the, small malfunctioning issues, or if somebody damages one, from a long-term perspective, do you see towns have any type of issues with the solar?
I can tell you that the things that fail on solar systems are the inverters. And the inverters convert the power from DC, what the panel makes, to AC, and so you can use it. And the inverters they have fans and they have filters in them, and they need to be cleaned or changed once a year. And the lifespan of an inverter is about 10 to 12 years right now, but the replacement is built into the RFP. So when that inverter fails, they already have it built in, and they know they're going to have to do it. But that's not your responsibility either, it's theirs. As far as the output goes, the panels that we spec out in projects are something called, Bloomberg Financial came out with this rating system for solar panels. It's a tiering system. In any solar project that wants to get financed by like Wells Fargo or any of those big financing companies has to have a Tier 1 panel. And the Tier 1 panels just mean the company's really vertically integrated. They do manufacturing, support, testing, design, not just a wholesaler or someone that's buying them in China and shipping them over here. So we will have Tier 1 equipment for the town, and it'll be high quality, and they'll have an output warranty of like 25 years. I mean, it degrades, like solar panels are most effective when they come out of the box, and then every year they degrade about 0.5% until they get to about 84%, and then they just level off and stay there. And we'll all be retired when these things stop working. I promise you that. I will, at least I will be.
I will be, so.
No, so that's, it's a real stable, benign technology. The panels are non-toxic. They do have more efficient solar technology that uses like cadmium and these metals that you can't get rid of. So they're not building them, and they're expensive. But the silicon panels are non-toxic, and they have copper and glass and some substrate in them, and they don't really do anything.
Are they recyclable?
Believe it or not, yes.
So if they break, and they can be recycled?
Yes. I mean, it's unlikely, like I said, it's going to happen, but
Right.
it's a commodity, it's a recyclable commodity. I don't see very many of them being taken down.
Okay, good.
If you ever had an issue on a roof, you might want to think about this. If you had an issue on the roof and you needed to move a string of panels, you just disconnect the system and move them and put them back.
Yeah.
You have to notify the owner of the array that you need to do some work, and they might even spec out an electrical contractor that they'd have out and move them. But the things just string together, and they go into a combiner box, and the combiner boxes feed an inverter, and it's pretty simple. They have a lot of safety built into them. The electrical code requires a rapid disconnect, so if firefighters are out there, they're not dealing with charged circuits, they just shut right down. If there's a power loss in town, they shut down because they don't backfeed. So no one
Right.
gets hurt when you're working on wires, so they're pretty safe. Snow removal on roofs, they're going to do an engineering check to make sure that the weight is, they usually put about 4 pounds per square foot on a roof. If the roof won't handle it, they're not going to put them up there. If you need to remove snow, there'll be channels to remove it if you need to do it by shovel, but the best way to do it is use one of those commercial steamers that looks like a power washer, but it's a big steamer. You just go up and blast the snow off them with the steamer.
Mm.
And ultimately, you don't even have to do that, because unless it's a weight issue, if panels are covered with snow, they figure that into their yearly equation, and they know that a panel is going to produce, this amount of watts in a year in Massachusetts, and that includes February being covered with snow. So anything that's daylight in February is a bonus for production-wise, and you get more of a benefit, but that's about it.
So,
No snow.
with the roof installation, it would be, say, the facility maintenance team's responsibility to clear snow if that was,
If it had to be,
if it had to be.
yes.
At the landfill, because you wouldn't have the weight issue, they probably would set it and forget it type of thing through
That's
the
it.
winter.
So they're going to build the racking systems up to a certain height, and they're going to angle the panels at a certain angle, and that
Mhm.
snow is going to actually shed.
Mhm.
Now, last winter, when we had 4 feet of snow, or whatever it was here, the snow actually shedded into a pile of snow, and it stopped.
It didn't stop.
But it didn't hurt anything.
Right.
It didn't hurt anything at all. The panels in the carport canopies are actually designed to channel water. So they don't just shed, and they actually would spec out snow breaks on them, so if there were ice, it wouldn't just fall onto people.
Mm.
The better ones have ice breaks on them, but they have gutters. They have gutters, so you're not going to have icicles in the middle of them or
Yeah.
anything like that. So they are designed to channel water effectively, and that'll all be done through engineering. It's really, really meticulous.
Does anybody have any other questions?
No.
Well, David, thank you very much.
Thank you
This
for
was
inviting us.
Incredibly helpful.
Thank
and
you.
Very
Yes,
informative.
thank you.
All right, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch.
Be in touch.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for coming.
All right, our next agenda item Eric, do you have an update for us on the community grant projects?
I do. Last year, in April, we received a grant award from the Department of Energy Resources in the amount of just about $158,000 to fund 3 projects. We funded an oil to gas conversion at the town hall, along with a boiler upgrade. And we just completed an energy management system installation, which basically included automated controls for room temperature, dampers, and valves, and circulator pumps. It's all automated electronically, and it is serviceable online. And
Neat.
so we can control the system at the town hall now from a smartphone or from
Cool.
a tablet, which is really neat. And the police station had some minor upgrades that would help with some humidity control in the basement. And those projects, in order for us to be eligible for this year's grant funding, the projects need to be completed and a report submitted this week. And after this meeting, I'm going to go back to the office and submit our report. And hopefully DOER will accept the report and grant us approval to proceed to seek additional funding this year.
Nice.
That's great.
Fantastic.
So we were really aggressive over the course of the year, and especially over this winter, in finishing these projects in order to get ourselves positioned, so we're coming in right under the line here.
Eric, any thought, any idea on, and I'm sure that was probably in the request for the grants, just how much money it's saving the town for them? Was there any projections at least as to what the lift would be?
We do have the projections on energy and cost savings annually. I don't have the numbers on me, but I'd be happy to share that with the group at the next meeting.
Okay.
Just be curiosity more than
Absolutely.
anything, so.
And by the next meeting, if all goes well, we should at least have a list of projects that we'd be seeking funding for. So we could give you an update there as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. We'll report back.
Maureen,
Yes.
on the last topic, if it's okay with you, I would be curious to hear the group's feedback on
Oh,
David's
yes.
presentation, and what the group feels, what their sense is on what PMSCO is offering in town. I don't know if it's...
The one thing, so it seems like it's a very, robust offering, the consulting piece, and as Mr. Cohen definitely knows the industry. The one thing I would just challenge is, so what if we were to go to a solar city ourselves? What is the gain of having the consultant come in versus, would there be that much of a difference from and it's so hard to tell unless you were to go out to do multiple bids, but, nothing precludes us from going out and contacting different solar vendors to present RFPs. If we felt that there were people in the town with the subject matter expertise that could facilitate the project, know what to look for, all of those aspects, that's really what they bring to the table. So I thought everything that he said definitely made sense, but I would just challenge us to kind of think that through, if it was something that we would want to consider. Knowing that I don't have the subject matter expertise to do it, but it was just the one thing I thought. It is an option. I don't know if it's the best option for the town, but an option nonetheless.
Right.
Personally, I feel I understand what you're saying as far as that goes, but I think it's a win-win situation for the town, where there's no cash outlay whatsoever on our part. The only thing that we've met on this a couple times with the town manager and whatnot is the concern of their responsibility to us, you know, their commitment, how long, you know, I mean, it's good that he stands up there and he says, yeah, I'm gonna be here from, you know, from dusk to dawn and whatever, but we have nothing in writing. Not to
Right.
say that they're gonna, you know, sign on and leave town or anything like that, but, you know, that's why it's important that we're not left hanging. Now, he did mention, you know, that he would, they would draft up a, you know, some type of memorandum of understanding or something to that effect. I would say before the town manager would approve this, this commitment, she would have to be satisfied with this letter, a memorandum of understanding, so.
And he did, I know they provided a letter from, was it the town of Brookfield? That we had looked at the last meeting? I guess he
Yes.
did mention references, so
It
I
does have
think.
references.
Yeah, I think maybe that's where asking to provide a reference that's post-commission, to get some of their thoughts. And it doesn't have to be a town necessarily, but just, I mean, a town would be great, someone in a similar situation than we are. But I don't think it would be out of the realm to ask them for someone we could reach out to, or maybe a couple references to get their thoughts on how the consultant engaged with them throughout the whole process.
Yeah, we did, I mean, we did get the letter from
Brookfield.
Brookfield.
Right.
Were they early on in the process, though? I can't remember.
I don't think it was it completed?
Yeah, it wasn't completed.
Yeah, it's
It
not
was?
complete.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
It wasn't, yeah.
That's what I thought.
They're currently awaiting bids on the second RFP with 5 town-owned parcels.
That's right.
It said that they did all the work associated with producing the RFPs, researching the sites, organizing site visits, analyzing the results. So they seem pleased with the work. I just don't know why, number one, there's a second proposal. You know, this is the second RFP. I don't know what happened to the first one. But this is the only one that this is the second person that we solicited to, on behalf of the town. The first one was a former executive secretary of the town of Auburn, and he was very short on words. Basically said, yeah, we worked with him. You know, he gave us no insight whatsoever, so he's kind of, so we had to move on to some, you know, to Brookfield, which at least we got a little more information on that, so.
So it sounds like it'd be in the interest of the committee to hear from references from other sources.
Yes.
Sure.
I agree.
He did mention 16 municipal solar projects.
Right.
Now, I don't know, out of the 16, how many are completed?
I think one of the things that narrowed his response to our request for references is that Julie asked us specifically to request references for landfills.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Because
Okay.
our project was a landfill project, and they're working with North Brookfield to develop their landfill as one of those 5 sites. They haven't, it's not completed. So there is opportunity to speak to other towns just in general about their experience.
So I guess to that question, Eric, is it, you know, are we open? I know we've always talked about just the landfill, but would the town be interested in entertaining more?
I would
if it
say
seemed
yes. I mean, you know,
viable?
we can't speak on behalf of the schools. Obviously,
Right.
we would have to approach the school committee and the superintendent and whatnot
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
to see if they would be interested in it. But I'm sure there's other town buildings, like I was just mentioning to Eric, that we have a storage building up at the landfill, that used to be the landfill garage, it's got a brand new roof on it.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect spot, you know?
Great.
Nobody's even gonna see it, it's kind of tucked away, so we could, you know, plaster the thing with all kinds of panels, you know, whatever would fit, you know? You know, and we have a couple other municipal buildings that, you know, I think would work as well. And it'd be interesting, you know, he had mentioned that they work with the assessor's office on some of the parcels that the town owns. You know, and I know we wouldn't want to put any kind of array, you know, on the ground in the middle of a residential area,
Right.
because, you know, it'd get unsightly, so.
Mhm.
But, you know,
We
that's
do.
definitely something else to
We
explore.
do have some, the Open Space Committee just reviewed our land holdings, the entire land holdings of the town that are currently undeveloped. And we do have some remote parcels that, that may be eligible for something like that. I think the concern from my end about, say, putting panels on the roofs of the schools, I think it would be, in one respect, it would be really great, you know, to have the energy behind the meter and to reduce those, the electricity cost. The downside is that the town has already, he mentioned power purchase agreements, the PPA. The town has already entered into those agreements,
And that meter
and
credits.
one is with Sun Edison, who he referenced. And we are responsible to purchase, or in an agreement to purchase, so many credits from Sun Edison per year. And if we reduce our energy consumption, ideally, we would want to reduce that, but if we reduce that electricity consumption from the grid so much that it then impacts our power purchase agreement, that would be a concern. Does that make sense with that?
Yeah.
concern?
Because that was one of the avenues that we initially were looking at, because they said we were at, like, at one point, we were at like 92%, you know, wrapped up into the net metering credits, I believe is what it was. But one project fell through.
One project failed, yes.
So I don't know where that left us, you know, from the 92%, you know, where we're at right now, because there's one project that's actually operational right now,
Right, I'd
that
say
we're actually getting the credits for.
About like 80% now, 75 to 80%.
So that leaves us like 20, maybe 20%.
But
you know.
these are,
So is the, and not to go too far down the rabbit hole on it,
Right.
just trying to think through it.
Mhm.
Now, is this the one where we're committed for, is it 20 years into it?
Yes.
And is it based upon just a usage or just the amount that, so is it based on X number of kilowatt hours we say we're going to purchase from them, or is it a percentage of the usage that the municipal buildings will have?
it's based on the, right.
Little from
But
column
essentially,
A,
it's
little-
the agreement is that we will off-take the credits from the site. And the site produces, or is estimated to produce around, 3.5 megawatts of power in a year. And the town uses approximately 4.5 right now with our municipal and school buildings. And so those 3.5 megawatts, that's what our agreement is, to basically, we receive those credits and then we pay back to Sun Edison a certain amount to offset that cost. So it's maybe a little convoluted, but we're essentially our contract is for that credit amount.
Mhm.
Did that answer your question?
I'm trying to think it through, I'm going
Yeah.
really.
It's a
Because-
lot of, it's a lot of new terminology. too.
Yeah. Because it just seems, well, I think we'd have to kind of go through and do the economics to it. To
Mhm.
me, it seems like any opportunity we have in the town to reduce our energy costs,
Mhm.
especially through a green energy solution, just seems like worth pursuing it as far as we can, and,
Absolutely.
you know, and kind of having, I think, vetting these a little bit and then maybe presenting them to David again and saying, let's try to get maybe a little more involved into how this piece would work, I think would be
Right.
helpful. But that would be stuff I think you'd want to know to think through.
And those, I would imagine, would be details that we would discuss with PMSCO
Mhm.
before we went to RFP, so we could understand what we actually
Yeah.
have an appetite for as a community. As far as, putting the panels on roofs or in parking lots and those types of.
Because, and not to get too into it, but if we made a commitment to use, what did you say, it was 3 million
3.5 megawatts.
megawatts.
Mhm.
Is that like per year for 20 years?
Right.
So that, that's set based upon when that contract was agreed to, that, I would imagine there'd have to be some type of thought into, that that's assuming that there will be no changes in the technology based upon the needs.
Right.
Or what about the needs of the town? What if the town significantly increased and there were 2 more schools, or we had people leave and we
It'd
ended up.
probably be more so less usage than more usage.
Yes, so.
We
in-
knocked 2 buildings off from the grid, basically,
Right.
right
Yeah.
now.
Last year.
You know,
Right.
within the last year.
Yeah, so
No.
I'd imagine there might be some nuances into the contract where that, because that 3 committing us to that is meaning that everything that existed year 1 is going to be the same at year 20.
Right.
And that's a oversimplification, I don't know enough about it, but I think that's something we should probably understand how that works, because it just doesn't, I can't imagine that the town would commit to something saying for 20 years, this is the energy we're gonna, unless it was extremely beneficial, saying, yes, we don't know where we'll be, but we still think.
But
it
very
is-
conservative.
or
Right,
very-
right,
Fair
right.
enough.
That's
yeah.
what I figured,
Yeah, so,
And even though we knocked 2 buildings off, we got 1 new one.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
who's to say we're not gonna put 2
Right, right.
new back
Mhm.
on the grid, you know? We're kinda expanding, so. Eventually, we're gonna need more space again.
so Eric, what are your thoughts for next steps? What do you think are the best way?
Well, I'm hearing that we'd like references from other towns.
Mm-hmm.
It would be great to have those for our next meeting. And
Especially maybe some schools, since we did talk about schools.
right, yeah. I think we would want to request an example maybe of a memorandum of understanding. You said that they've drafted those for other towns.
Yep.
Yep.
So that would be good, and we could put that before Julie and see, what her feedback is there. And my sense, I feel similarly to you that it would be a good thing to do as long as we can assure that, that the memorandum looks in favor of the town, that protects our
I
needs.
agree.
And then from there, I think these finer nuanced conversations of, what about the agreement that we have with Sun Edison and that would be after we decide whether or not to use PMSCO's,
And that's something that we could
Services.
handle outside of,
Right.
these meetings.
Yep.
More or less report back, so we're not
Yep.
using up the whole meeting time.
right, getting
on
lost.
TV.
Digging over
yeah.
contracts and.
We'll make
and
for good
reports.
TV, I'll tell you.
I think that's great. So next steps, we'll look for a reference, example of a memorandum, bring that back here, and then,
Yep.
are your thoughts perhaps similar to what we did with the municipal aggregator? We discuss it here and, motion if we want to make a formal recommendation.
I think that's what Julie would be looking for.
Okay.
Is a formal recommendation from the committee. And she did say, she passed along her questions to the group and did say if the committee vets PMSCO and feels comfortable with their services and would like to make a recommendation, she would take that recommendation seriously.
Okay.
So.
Excellent.
So hopefully within, the next month, we can get them on board with our requests and run some of it or all of it by Julie, so we could get a feeling from her for our next meeting as well.
Yep, that would be great.
Great.
Whether she's on board,
Right.
And then from there, we'll start to look at what are all the other areas we need to dig into, so.
Yep.
Great. All right, so we'll put that in the minutes. Always seems Eric gets all the action items out of the. I don't know how that works, so
Part of my job.
it's a artful note-taking. Excellent, so why don't we move on? Our next public comment. Is there any public comment from those in the audience? No public comment. Do we have any informal discussion items tonight?
I believe so.
No, I will say that the LED presentation from Sutton.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Hopefully can happen next month.
Oh, that'd be great.
I
Yeah.
we bumped it from this meeting in order to make room for PMSCO, and the presenter does have the date of our next meeting, and she said that she'll confirm.
Terrific.
So,
We will look forward to that. Great. And we'll send something out in advance of that. I just want to make sure that if we do need time to review,
Mm-hmm.
that we just allocate, we have Doreen come in first, so then
Right.
we can
Yep.
utilize the rest of the time if we're ready at that point to look at
Good, yeah.
PMSCO. I didn't see any, do we have any formal correspondence between now and the last meeting? All right. My favorite agenda item, approving of the minutes. I have copies, in case, I know I sent them out, but just in case people
Yep.
did not receive them. So we have the minutes from the December 28th and the January 25th meetings. Does anybody need a copy here?
Oh, I like tomorrow.
Okay. Were there any updates required, or anything that anybody noticed?
I didn't see any.
Would anybody like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes for December 28th, 15, and January 25th of 16 as presented.
Would you like to second the motion?
I shall second.
Okay. All approve? All right, by unanimous vote, the motion is approved that the December 28th and January 25th minutes. Approved. I will submit those tomorrow. All right, our next agenda item is just our next regular meeting will be Monday, March 28th at 5:30 here, at the Auburn School Department at 5 West Street. So other than that, there are no other agenda items. Would you like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Move to adjourn.
sounds tough one.
Anybody?
Second.
We vote, it's all approved. All right. Motion approved at 6:48 PM.